What's up, comic book fans? It's the Emerald Enthusiast, the co-host of the Emerald Echo podcast. Here with a look at three different 12-inch Spin Master Batman figures. We have the Bat-Tech Batman, the Basic Batman, and the Attack Tech Batman. So I found all three of these figures on clearance a couple of months ago, and I thought that the three of them together would make for a great review. So with no further ado, let's get right to the package details. Here's a side view of the figures. You can see them through the bubble packaging. You can see more of the figures through the opposite sides of the packaging, and down here we see the Spin Master logo. On the back bottom, we get headshots of many of the other figures available in this line. On the bottoms of the packages, we get lots of product information as well as the Spin Master web address. And here's a view of the figures through the top of the bubbles. On the back top, we get product shots of these three versions of Batman. The front bottoms are similar, except on the Bat-Tech Batman, you get this barcode to download this app. Here are the figures as seen through the front of the bubbles. There's not a lot of wasted material here. I've always said that I'm a fan of the Spin Master packaging, but now I think it's time to bust these figures out of that packaging and see what's inside. Here are the figures free of the outer packaging, but still bound to the inner plastic. Other collectors often ask me why I review the Spin Master line when most other figure reviewers only concentrate on collector-centric lines. And that's because I really do believe these figures are worthwhile. They're a major upgrade over what I had as a kid, and as toys, I think these are good values. There's a lot of playability in these. And even from a collector point of view, if I were a Batman collector, I would have no problem displaying these next to McFarlane's or DC Universe Classics because I really do think they're well constructed and the paint applications are good. So let's take a closer look at the loose details now. Let's look at the lower bodies of these figures, and with the Basic Batman and the Bat-Tech Batman, from the knee down, these figures are identical. You get this like stylized knee portion here of this armor. It's all one piece with the boot part. But I really do like the way that looks. That's really cool. You get some lines sculpted in right here. Also some wrinkles sculpted in down here. And of course I appreciate this tread that they use. That looks very realistic. And if you look at the Bat-Tech, the boot area, as well as the knee area, it's identical to the Basic Batman. So I believe we have reused parts there. Now, if you take this guy out, if you bring in the Attack Tech Batman, there are clear differences here. This is, the way the molding is much more segmented to make this seem like more armor, like more metal parts. Like he's using this suit for more durability. And you can see, obviously, that the feet are different. Doesn't have the tread. It's more of a mechanical look to it. It even has right here, you can see, like it's the suggestion, the way it's been molded, like it has little bolts in it. So those are the differences there. And another thing that I want to note, when you pick these figures up, the Attack Tech figure is much lighter than the other two. And I think because it has more detail, they probably used a thinner plastic mold, or perhaps it's actually hollow. I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not going to break these figures open and find out, but you can certainly tell a difference in the heft of these figures if you pick them both up. Now let's take a look at the quadriceps and hip areas of these figures. So I really like the molds that they use for the thighs here. And Spin Master did a really good job of sculpting these quadriceps. I mean, these look like big muscles that, are used to lifting weights and running and jumping. Here's a look at the hamstrings back here. Got a little extra paint back here. That's dripped down from the belt. But I also like the fact that on this one, there are lines that have been sculpted in that denote fabric over muscle. So it's little things like that that makes me appreciate what Spin Master does with this line. And you can tell here actually from this area that this figure is repainted. It's the same molding and everything, just slightly different paint applications. Obviously the belt on this one's yellow, this one's silver. I really love this metallic paint. That really accomplishes what they set out to do here. Not much on the back. I do appreciate the fact that I really don't like stamps on figures unless they're underneath the foot. But at least if they have to put it on the figure itself, at least it's covered up with the cape. With the Attack Tech figure, you can clearly see the differences here. There are lots more lines along the quadriceps area here, and I think what they're trying to denote is like different metal parts that have been fused together to make a suit. You can even see that on the back here, like these lines that go, that kind of frame where the hamstrings would be. I do like how reflective this plastic is. It's very shiny, and I appreciate that. And you can also clearly see the difference in the hip area here. There's not nearly as many lines over here as there are on the other two figures. As well as the belt is different. You can clearly see sculpting differences. You can see there, like, there's no... You see this little square that has been sculpted in on this figure. It's not here on this piece. So, yeah, there are certainly differences. Like I said, this figure... There are many more differences to this figure than there are between the other two. Any differences in the lower body articulation are negligible. As you can see here, all three figures in just an astounding side-kicking pose. And this is why I say that for a kid from the 70s or 80s, we look at something like this, and this was beyond our imagination back then, because you certainly couldn't get the Superpowers line to do anything like this. And of course, with each one of these, you can get him to kick forward a substantial amount. So again, I certainly appreciate this amount of articulation. And another area in which I would like to commend Spin Master for their work, as you can see here, the angles of the thighs here, you can get these figures to step back a little bit. And that may seem like a minor thing, but when you're posing a figure, it's always helpful to have that little bit of movement to get the figure to step back to make sure that they have a firm base on your shelves. So I really appreciate it when figures can step back like this. And that's not always the case, even with collector-centric lines. Now let's have a look at each of the torsos. So this is my favorite of the three just because it looks the most classic. I really like this gray. I've never really been a fan of Batman having any blue in his costume. That's just a personal preference. I like blacks and grays in his costume with maybe just a dash of yellow. But I like how this has been done. You see the ribs over here, the obliques, the abdominals, with just enough sculpting to make you believe that there's still like material that could be here. So I really like how that looks. Love the chest emblem. It's a little tad bit sloppy right about here, but I still like it. Again, looks classic. Here's a look at the latissimus dorsi under here. The lower lumbar. Yeah, everything looks really good. This one, again, this is supposed to have more of a like technological look, and it certainly does. Certainly like those paint applications. I really like how the light dances off of this one. And again, this is a very stylized looking bat, so this may not be to everyone's taste, but I still like it. With this one, the Attack Tech Batman here, I'm just realizing I think this might be the same mold as the Batman that came in the Batman 2-pack with Bane, which I don't have anymore. I actually traded that away. But this is different because it has these portions up here, and you can actually feel the edges of this. This is a sculpted in piece that gives you the impression of, again, metal, and like there's a bolt on this. And you notice here that the edges of like the abdominals, that it looks like, again, like metal pieces or some kind of armor that have been placed over a human torso. And here's a close-up of two of the figures' backs, and you can clearly see the difference. This looks like some kind of durable material over human muscle. This looks like metal that's been fused together. Again, they kept this motif all the way around. And I certainly appreciate that, attention to detail, even though this is going to be covered up by the cape. I certainly like that. Let's take a look at the arms now. And of course, they're all very similar. I like the choice of plastic on these. The gloves look really good. Like, I like the sculpting on these. Underneath here, I really like how that looks. You get articulation here at the wrist, and of course, all of these just have gripping hands. You can get the arm to go out this far to the side like that. You can also get it to go up that far. But here's a prime example of why I think Spin Master is really an innovative line. Okay, so you get this hinge here at the elbow, but there's also this swivel here. And so that gives you lots of posing options with these. And again, as a kid, that would have been something that I would have just found wonderful. So the Attack Tech, again, a little bit different. More angular. Really do like this paint choice. It really does look good. But it has that same feature. Goes all the way around. And again, that's just really impressive. Now this has more of that paint on it, that metallic blue. Looks really good. So yeah, the arms on all of these, the musculature looks good. Just everything really looks good on all of that. And I should mention, if you're wondering if you can get the shoulder joints to go around 360 degrees, you certainly can. So let's take a look at the head sculpts now. And initially, I thought that the basic figure and the Bat Tech figure had identical head sculpts, and I was wrong about that. So let's take a closer look at what I mean here. So initially, I thought the only differences in these two head sculpts was that this had a matte finish and this has more of a glossy finish. But I was wrong about that. If you'll notice here, right underneath the chin, there's an extra little bump. And then I noticed that this area here, the trapezius and the neck, this one is slightly bigger. And when I turn the figures around, I noticed that as well. This one, a little bit more defined over here. And again, it's subtle. It's hard to see unless you really take the time to look at it. But this is not an insignificant thing. And I say that because of this. With this figure, you can get his head to move easily side to side. It's not a problem. You can get it to move all the way around. But with this one, because of the slightly bigger neck area, and I really do think that the head sculpt is actually a little bit smaller too. Because of all that, the articulation for the neck, it goes to about right here, and then you see it like at an angle, and I feel like if you tried to force it further, that you could break it. Now, maybe you want to try it, and maybe you don't break it, but I don't want to force it any further than this because I can feel it. I can feel resistance at this point. Also, what I want to note here is the mouth areas. This one has more detail. This one, it looks like maybe there's been just a little bit of a wash given to it, so you can actually see more of the lip area. This has been just given kind of a hasty job, so this one definitely, I think, is better as far as the head sculpt goes. So if you do decide to buy this figure, just be wary of that. Be careful in articulating the head. Now, when it comes to the Attack Tech figure, Again, the sculpt, obviously, it's more like a mechanized look. You can see the differences in the eyes here. And differences in the chin pieces here, too. Like this comes over top of his chin. So like it's kind of encasing the lower part of his jaw. And the movement here is much easier. You can even hear that. And obviously the back looks very different. You can see there. Again, more of a mechanized look. So while I think that these head sculpts all hit the mark, if you do decide to purchase the Bat Tech figure, just exercise caution when you are articulating the head. So there's only one aspect with each one of these figures that I dislike, and that is the cape. And you can probably see why. The material that they used here, it wrinkles very easily, and it even looks kind of cheap, I have to say. And you're gonna hear this probably. Like you can hear that because it almost feels like paper. And I've seen worse, don't get me wrong. I've seen some gauzy capes that just look awful, but these definitely don't look great. But let me say this. I understand exactly why Spin Master does this, because if they used a higher quality type of material, they would have to bump the price. And I understand that they're not going for that. These are meant for kids, and I'm sure kids would be okay with this. I'm just saying that a lot of adult collectors are going to look at these and say, that looks kind of cheap. I certainly hope you have enjoyed this review. If so, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend to do the same. Stay tuned at the end of the video for some articulation shots. And also remember to catch me on the Multiverse Musings vidcast, available right here on YouTube, where we cover all the happenings in the DC and Marvel universes and beyond. And I'll be back to the internet with more comic book related content soon. But until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.